Hey pre-algebra, this is 10.3 called histograms, our last section for the week. Next week we're going to do a little bit more with chapter 10, and it'll even go into the week after that, then we'll finish it up. So kind of a little bit longer of a chapter, but alright, well, I hope you're doing well. If you think of it right now, stop, shoot me an email. Tell me what's going on with your life and how are things. Miss being able to catch up with everybody. Okay, so let's get a little bit of data, information here, vocabulary, I guess. Oh, here we go. I didn't even have the title. Here we go. Okay, so number 10.3 in your notes, let's take some notes saying histograms and look at some data here. So feel free to pause this video and write this all down and then hit play while I talk about it. Okay, so data column. We're going to be given a bunch of data, okay? And then sometimes that data is going to happen more than once. So if you'll notice here, we have like two 14s, two 15s, we got a couple 17s, we got a couple 13s, they're spread out, some 12s really. This information is not in order. So you just have a bunch of numbers, and we've got to figure out, often, I guess the example in the book is like if you had scores of a class, especially you had 10 questions, then you're going to have a lot of, I give partial credit, so I suppose there could be a few, but you might have some like 75s and 80s and 90s and 95s, but so you'll have a lot of repeated numbers, right? Because everyone's going to have approximately the same grades. Now, it's possible that someone could get a 92 if there was a unique situation with partial credit or some amount back on their corrections, but outside of that, you're going to have a set amount of data, and there's going to be these windows that you'll look at. Often this is used if you're taking data for ages, right? So if you ever filled out a questionnaire and it said, what age are you? And it doesn't give every single number, that would take forever for you to pick which number you are, and that doesn't matter to them. Say, hey, do you fall in the window? Are you between 10 and 15? Are you between 16 and 20? Okay. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the information that we need for this. We're going to have a data column, and this is just all your data, all your numbers. So all your 65s, all your 70s, all your 75s, all your 80s, all your 95s, and all your 100s for the test score that might have been out of 20 points, 5 points each. Okay, so that's the data arranged in numerical order. Then we'll have a frequency column, and that's going to be, you'll actually have a tally mark column, and then you'll write the number of numbers. So as you're marking down all the grades, maybe I've assigned you, because now you're an 8th grader, and we have a huge 7th grade class this year, and there's going to be a lot of grades, and I want to see about how well people did. So I just give you a list of numbers without names, and I say, hey, put them in a histogram for me and show me how well did people do on this. So you would just tally every time you saw someone with a 95, put a little tally by the 95, and etc. Okay, so that's just how many times does that number occur. And then the product column is exactly that, the data times the frequency. There's really no other way to write that. And that tells us if that number represented something, you multiply it through and you'll see how many of something occurred or happened. So that information is sometimes useful for what you're looking for with your sample and your statistics, but sometimes it's not helpful, but we will still include it in this column because for histogram you do need that. Okay, so let's take a look at this data. Man, the first thing we need to do is put it in order, but the nice thing about that is I don't have to write it in order here and then put it in order again. I'm going to put it in order in my data column, so I'm just going to write it straight there. Does that make sense? Okay, this is actually skills check 1 if you are wanting to follow along. And just kind of make it a little bit easier on us here. We don't have to do that again. Okay, so let's, I'll use red. So we have a 12. Oh no, we have a 10. That's even smaller. Let me get a thinner marker here. Okay, so we're going to have a 10. And how many of those do we have? It looks like we have 1, 2 10s. And see how I'm just making a tally mark on that? Okay, now I have an 11 next I saw. Okay, and do I just have one of those? Okay, looks like it. And then 12 would be next, and I have 1 12. Just kind of go from right to left, another 12, and that's it. now I have a 13. And I have one of those there and one at the end, so it's 2 of those. And 14 is next, and I do indeed have 14. If you don't have one of these numbers, you can skip it. So there's a 14 there. There's 1, 2, 3 of those. All right. Do I have a 15 out there? Yep, there's a couple. So there's 15. Let's tally those. 15. There's another 15. Go all the way over to the end. I don't see any more. So let's see. There's a 16 out there. I saw that one. There's just one of those. 17. There's one there. There's one down there and another one down there. Oops, cross that out right. Okay, so if you guys are thinking, oh, your mode is tied right now, if you're recognizing it, this is an easy way to get the mode. 18 happens just once. Oh, that's the wrong color. 18 happens once. That might have been an easier color to see, though, actually. I hope you can see this okay. I have to give myself a little more space here. All right, 19 happens once, and 20 happens once. Okay, now what I always do is go up and check. Did I make sure I crossed every number off? Okay, looks like I did. All right, so we also have a total column down here, which I missed somehow. All right, so let's just kind of make these a little bit longer here, and then I'm going to write the total. All right, so for I don't need to total my tally marks because I'm about to do that for frequency. So I'm going to kind of zoom in here a little bit. How many 10s did I have? Well, I had 2. I had 1, 11, 2, 2, 3, 2, 1, 3, 1, 1, 1. Okay, now I do need to add these all up, and this will tell me right here, when I add this column up, what will this tell me? Yeah, that's going to tell me how many numbers I have, right? Okay, and it looks like I have 19. Kind of that twice. It makes sense to be 20, but okay, we've got 19. You know, that's real life. You don't have these even nice, clean numbers most of the time. Okay, now product is going to be the data number multiplied by the frequency. So if I have 10 twice, that's really like 20. This is a way here. What do you think this would be when I added up all the products? That's going to be all of this added together, right? So it's going to be pretty easy to find the mean, right? Because I have to add them all together. All right? And then I can divide by the number of numbers, which is going to be right here, and I'm going to find my mean right away. So this is really helpful when you're looking for some of those things. Okay, so 10 times 2 is 20. Let me add a couple lines here, so it might make it easier. Okay, if you have regular graph line paper, it would be definitely a lot easier. Okay, all right, 11 times 1, well, that's easy. 12 times 2 is 24. 13 times 2 is 26. All right, 14 times 3 is 42. 15 times 2 is 30. 16 times 1 is 16. 17 times 3 is 51. 18 times 1 is 18. 19 times 1 is 19. 20 times 1 is 20. Okay, now I'm going to add these up for my total down here, and this is going to be the total of all of my numbers. If I were to add all of them up, you could sit here and you could add all of these numbers up, or you could add these numbers in this column down here and you would get the same thing, okay? All right, so let's add all of these up. When you're doing these, feel free to use a calculator for this part. The point is for us to analyze the data, not work on our mental math, and it's easy to make mistakes when you do that, so that's really not our point on this right now. All right, so if I were to add all those up, I get 277. Okay, now I'm going to look for I finished my table. Now I'm going to look at this table and use it to find my range, my mean, my median, and my mode for my data. Okay, so again, here's all my data, and it is more easily represented in this table. So my range, still the same thing, but now that I have my numbers in order, it's easy to see my smallest number and my largest number. So for my range, it's going to be 20 minus 10, and that will be 10. So my range is 10. My mean is my average. Okay, and we talked about how easy it's going to be to find your average here. Once you have the product total and your frequency total, you can divide those. So my mean, I'm going to kind of write this in here. This is my product total divided by my frequency total. So to some of you that might make a lot of sense, so you don't have to necessarily write that down and remember, but that will be helpful. So the product total is down here. Let me color coordinate this a little bit better for you. Let's make this yellow, the product total. And my frequency total, we'll make it red, like it is here. Okay, so I'm going to use 277 and divide it by 19 in order to find my mean. Now, because you have that data, it kind of does a lot of the work for you, and it's easier to not mess it up. So we're going to round, it really comes out to 0.5789, but we're going to say 14.6. Remember, we're going to round to the tenths, 14 and 6 tenths. Okay, so your median is one where we're still going to have to kind of do the same way. Now, you could mark off on your tally marks if you'd like to. You can mark off down here, or you can mark off with your numbers. Now, because I don't have my numbers in order, I'm going to go off of my tally marks because it's going to be a little bit easier for me, but you can do it if you'd like to put your numbers in order. You could do that as well. So I'm going to mark it off in white. So I'm going to mark off that one and one of those, mark off this one and one of those. Remember to go in order, and we'll be finding our median. Okay, so I still have this one left, so my median must be 14. And that makes sense because I had an odd number of data, so it should be 1. I don't have to take an average. Remember, if there were 2, I would have had to take an average between them. Okay, and then my mode. Well, the mode's pretty easy when we already talked about this. Which one, because I have this tally mark system over here, or you can look in the frequency, I've got a 3 and a 3, and so they are tied for first place, so 14 and 17 are your mode. Do you see how this table is helpful to find the range, the mean, the median, and the mode? All right, this is our interval frequency table. I'm laughing because I just did this whole thing with you and didn't hit record, apparently. So I'm not going to re-erase it and write it because I think that would get kind of sloppy. And so I'm just going to kind of use my pointer. So I'm sorry, guys. To bear with me on that. I think my stylus is actually kind of starting to die. Maybe that's why. I don't know. Okay, well, it doesn't really matter. So let's look at my frequency table here. A frequency table, interval frequency table, is used to construct a histogram, which is the other thing we're looking at today. We're kind of doing two things, I guess. And it's when you have a certain range. So here we've got our age range. You wouldn't need to make a whole list of every single person, and I don't really even know if I'm repeating myself, so I'm sorry if I am. I don't know what recorded and not. So if I were to take some data and go around, I am not going to say exactly how old everyone is. You might check off a box on a survey that says, I'm between the ages of 5 and 15, or I'm between the ages of 16 and 20, or something like that. So we don't need to take this exact age because then we've got a lot of data to work with and we don't need to know exactly. So this is going to be my age column. If you're following along, this is on page 406. And then we have a frequency column, and this is given to you. With what is circled in white, I would just be given. And I would say it's 14 people between the ages of 10 and 19. Or I have 10 people between the ages of 20 and 29. I have 17 people between the ages of 30 and 39, etc. Okay? Now, in order to find my product column for this, I need to actually find a midpoint. And this is the table that is on the lower part of page 406. Now, I'm not going to make a whole column for this because I don't think it's necessary. I can kind of just like tag it in here because I don't really know how many people are 11. I don't know how many people are 19 or 12, anything in between here. I don't actually know how many. I just know that 14 people said that they were between these ages. So I can't calculate a product because I don't have a data column. I actually have an interval column. So I don't have like just my one number multiplied by the frequency gives me the product like we did earlier. We need to find an average in my interval. So I'm just going to add up 10 plus 19 divided by 2 is 14.5. 20 plus 29 divided by 2 is 24.5. 30 plus 39 divided by 2 is 34.5. 40 plus 49 divided by 2 is 44.5, etc. Okay? I'm going to take this number here, which is my average of my interval. Okay, the average of my interval, multiply it by my frequency in order to find my product column. So 14.5 times 14 is 203. 24 times 24.5 times 10 is 254. You could go all the way down here. I'm not going to read through all of this with you. You can see that. Pause the video. Make sure you write this down in your notes. This table is also on page 406, like I said. Okay, so for frequency, remember we had to calculate my total. That means I have 83 people surveyed. Okay? Now, my product is actually the sum of all of my numbers. Now, some of them I multiplied to get up there, but this is actually the sum of all of my numbers. And because I don't have a list of numbers, I have this age range. This is actually the only way to find the sum of all these numbers in order to find the mean. So we're going to add up all the numbers that were given. Again, this is the only way once you find the average between the two because we have an interval. I hope that makes sense. This is like me adding up all the numbers that I'm given. And then I'm going to divide by the number of numbers, or 83 people, and the number of people surveyed. And I would be able to find that my average age is about 42.5. So this here, this 42.5 is actually my mean. Now we're not going to go find my range, my mode, and all those types of things. I could find a range and a mode and that type of stuff. I don't have an actual number because I have an interval, so I could have that for my interval. The median is actually going to be an interval, and the mode is actually going to be an interval, etc. Okay? All right, so we're just going to find the mean on that. Now, I do want to show you what this would look like as a histogram. You will not ever have to find one of these. You will only be calculating within frequency tables. Okay, you're not even going to have to find the range, the mean, and the median and modal intervals. So really just kind of see what this is like. You won't be doing this on your homework. All right, so here's the picture of the graph, the histogram that is in your book on page 406. So what we see is that the ages between 10 and 19, we had 14 of them, right? Does that look like about 14? Yeah. Okay. And then we have 10 people between 20 and 29. So this looks so much like a bar graph. You're going to use your frequency, the number of people, and then your age. Only difference is instead of having a 10, 11, 12, you actually have a range for each section of your graph, or each bar in your graph. Okay, so that's really the difference between a histogram and a bar graph. They're very, very similar. They just happen to have an interval instead. Okay? All right, well, I'm going to wrap this up because I've done it far too many times. I think that's all you need to work on your homework and to have a good concept of what is happening. You will need to answer some questions about a bar graph on your homework tonight. So I guess I should go over that real quickly with you just to make sure. If you had a histogram and you were looking at it like this, could we look at and see how many people fall in this range? Yes. Could I look at over here and say how many people fall between 70 and 79? Well, it looks like 5. Now, you wouldn't have this list over here to look at to know that there are 5. You would only be looking at this picture. So we'd say there are about 5 people between that age. So what is the frequency of, I'll rephrase my question, what's the frequency of people between 50 and 59 looking at your histogram? 50 and 59, come up to the frequency, it's 15, right? How many students or how many people are represented in this whole table? Well, you kind of have to add everybody up, right? This is what I want to know is how many people are in your survey? How many people are your total of your frequency column? So I would have to say, okay, here's 14, I would guess this is 10, add that up. Oh, I guess this is 17, add that up, add this up. However many, those frequency numbers, you might even write right on top of the little graph here. I could say, hey, this is 14. Okay, this is 10. I'm going to guess that this is 17. Okay, and then you would add up all of those numbers in order to find how many people are actually surveyed with this histogram. Okay, now let's look at the modal. And we can't just have a mode, right? We can't have what happened the most, but we can have a range that happened the most. Just by looking at this graph, what range happened the most? Well, this one right here, right? 30 to 39 has the most number of people. Okay, so that's your modal interval. And what about your median interval? Well, that one is a lot easier because we just get to kind of cross off from here's an interval, here's an interval, here's an interval, here's an interval. Okay? All right. Now I have 2 in the middle. So what do I do with 2 in the middle? Well, I am just going to, then we're going to have 2 in the middle there, right? So the problem with doing it this way is knowing, like, okay, do I just say it's an average of these 2 ages? Oops. The difference with a histogram is I don't actually know that half my data is up here and half my data is down here. It's not a box and whisker plot. Now I can use this for the mode, right, to see, okay, which one happens the most. In order to find my middle or my median interval, I need to say, where is my actual number of, if I were to list out all of my data, what happens or which number in my frequency column is in the middle, and then what interval does that fall in? Okay, so it's a little bit different. We're going to need to do a little bit more math with it. So we can basically do a couple things here. It's a pretty easy formula that I think would be the easiest. Now, we don't want to stop and make little hash marks when we have 83 pieces of data, right? But if I know that I have 83 pieces of data right here, I could pretty much find what's in the middle just knowing that there's 83 of them. So what we could do, because it's an odd number, I am going to make it an even number. I'm just going to bump it up to a 84, so that I can find the middle number. Okay, so if you add one more, so if you have an even number, you kind of cross them off, right? You would go from down here to up here, and you would cross off one less than half to get to the middle. So if we add one more, we're going to get to the middle. Now, if that doesn't make sense, without me going into too much depth on this, don't worry about that. I want you just to use the formula. Without being able to go through the whole thing, we would do an example in class, we would practice through this, and maybe make our own data. It would make a lot more sense, but for sake of time and just what we need to focus on in this chapter, we're going to just kind of look at the formula here. We're going to add 1 to whatever our frequency is and then divide it by 2. That's going to help us find the middle position, okay? So this is going to be 84 divided by 2. That gives us, what, 42. So 42 is our middle position. So that means that the first 3 intervals, let's look up here. I want to find 42. So I have 14 numbers, and then I have 10 more numbers. Okay, I'm not quite at 42. I'm going to just kind of come and add these up because really as I add, I'm going to see how many pieces of data I had. I could write out 10 to 19, 14 different times and cross them off, but that's kind of a lot of work. So I'm going to say 14 plus 10 gives me 24. Okay, and then plus 17, that gives me 41. So my next one is going to be 42 already. So 42 is going to be the second number of 40 to 49 in this 8 frequencies of the 40 to 49 age bracket. Okay, so I can already know just by looking at it that 40 to 49 is going to be where my median falls, and that's what I was about estimating when I did it this way. Okay, now it's not always going to be that way, but that's a good way to estimate about where, kind of compare and see if you think that should be accurate. Okay, so my modal interval here is going to be 40 to 49. Okay, I know that one was a little confusing. That question is not going to be, oh, it is. You have to do all of them. I'm sorry. That one will be on your homework. So you'll need to kind of you'll have smaller numbers and it'll be a little bit easier. Give that one a try. Look over this again. If I was as clear as mud because I was doing multiple things at one time and have already done this, why don't you look at page 406 to 407, the very bottom of 406 to top of 407 might give you a little bit more clarity on that. Please reach out. I would love to do a Zoom call with you. I'd love to kind of chat with you on the phone. I can email you back and forth. I can open a chat, something like that if you have some questions. So please reach out. I hope this helped a little bit. Tomorrow you'll just need to review. Reach out to me. Come to Math Enrichment if you have questions on that. And then Friday is our assessment over all of these things. All right. Miss you guys. Talk to you later.